All right, what is up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Fight Forecast. Once again, I am Ryan. I am here with AJ again. He was on the last card with us, and he's going to be breaking down the card with us again this week. We got a stacked card, one of the best cards we've seen in a while. So hopefully we can make you guys some money and make us some money, and that's what this is all about here. So the first fight right off the bat, we got Davey Grant versus Martin Day. I'll kick this one to you. What do you think about this fight?
This one doesn't really tickle my fancy too much, DraftKings wise. I think that the best case scenario here, what I would hope to get out of rostering each guy, Day, I'm more so hoping for a knockout. Just looking at his first fight in the UFC, landed 100 significant strikes. I like that volume. I just don't know if I could rely on that volume from him consistently. I'm hoping I can, but I'm just not so sure about that. So I'm more so playing him for the knockout. In Grant, I like a little bit more of the two because he's cheaper, and I think he's the guy that could land more takedowns here of the two. If there's going to be takedowns in this fight, I think they'll be coming from Grant. I do think that Day, despite looking better defensively, grappling and wrestling-wise, he could still be exploited, I think. So a fight that I'm not going to have a lot of exposure to, but neither could the field. But you know me, I'm a multiple lineup type of guy. I'm going to have a smidgen of each guy. And in terms of just like who I think wins, Dave probably gets it. I think he's the more agile fighter, younger guy, fights at the higher pace. So he'd be my preferred pick of the two. How about you?
So I actually have a stronger lean on this fight than it seems like you do. I actually really like Day a lot. Um, I think for his price on DraftKings, he's a little bit high. I believe he's 8,500. Um, so he's a little bit higher than I would like him to be on DraftKings, but I think he easily wins this fight. I actually think that he could get the submission, honestly. Grant has lost 4 fights via submission. Day has been known to sink in the submission in past fights, not necessarily with the UFC, but before he got to the UFC, he's been known to sink in the submission and finish fights that way. He also does get about 2 takedowns a fight, so I think that he does have the weight to get the fight to the ground and get those submission attempts. So I really do like Dea a lot this fight. I don't know if I feel confident enough betting him, but I'm someone that also looks at props and stuff like that. So looking props, Day via submission plus 600 for a guy in Grant that's lost 4 fights via submission. That's something that I may look into a little bit. Um, but yeah, I do have Day as one of my favorite plays on DraftKings this week, actually. So the next fight we got here, Melo. I think that Rosa is a little higher price than she should be on DraftKings. Coming into her second fight in the UFC, her first fight was an absolute brawl. She had, I believe it was 171 significant strikes, averages 6.8 strikes per minute. So I definitely do think that it could very well be that type of fight again, where there's a lot of significant strikes and stuff of that nature. I don't necessarily think she gets the finish. Melo has shown that she does have a fairly good chin in the past. So I don't necessarily think that Rosa gets the finish, but I do think that she will be able to compile enough signature strikes to um, put up a fairly good score on DraftKings. Just I don't think that it will be a high enough score for her price personally. Um, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't think I'll bet this fight either. If I did, it'd probably be Rosa. But I mean, I'll have some Rosa on DraftKings multiple lineups, but she's not one of my favorite plays this week. What about you?
Yeah, just from playing DraftKings, I'm sure you've noticed it too. It's like people want to invest in the fighters that have scored well historically, and you would think just at face value, like Carol Rosa scored, to your point, 125 DraftKings points in her debut, which is awesome. I understand there's a little bit of controversy with the significant strikes. Regardless, I think the fact that she attempted as many strikes as she did, it was north of 300, shows the type of fighter that she is. She wants to stand in the middle of the octagon, throw that heavy volume, combination striking, and she just basically doesn't take a backwards step, so to speak. So it's interesting because I don't think she'll be popular. Like you said, I mean, it makes sense. People think that she's overpriced, and perhaps she is. She'll also be lower owned because Hebas is priced above her, Jan, $100 your, even cheaper than her, Volkanovski, Namajunas, Usman, other fighters that people will like. I don't see many people clicking her name despite 125 points. I just don't see it. So we have a situation here where, obviously, like comparing her to Hebas, Jan, Volkanovski, Usman, I like those plays more. But, I am a multiple lineup type of guy, and it's interesting for large field tournaments because we just saw it in her debut. She can go out there and fight at a high pace. I also think there's more potential here for her to wrestle here because in her debut against Prosopio, Prosopio is a black belt. Just made sense for her to keep the fight standing. But here, I think she'll go for some takedowns. Melo's defensive wrestling was pretty solid against Cortez. So I don't expect her to easily get her down, but I do think she can. And from there, she could maybe control or steal off rounds. But undefeated should be competitive. So Melo at 7K is interesting in the sense because Procopio, I remember in the debut fight against Rosa, she put up a big score too, despite the last. I mean, she got her fair share of significant strikes too, like 80 points or so at least. So Melo is interesting in that sense because Rosa's defense is a liability. Like she just doesn't do an optimal job of moving her head. And as a result, she got hit a lot there. So it's actually a sneaky fight, not one that I think is like I'm going to have a lot of DK exposure to, but one where I can see the potential here and one that I'm not going to be like, no way, complete pass in every single lineup. So basically my thoughts on it. Should be a fun scrap, though. I mean, Rosa's fight with Procopio was fun, fan friendly.
Yeah, I definitely do think it is going to be one of those fights where they're kind of standing up on the feet, throwing a good amount of strikes in. Like you said, to your point, um, I I do think both fighters could score a good amount. Um, I personally wouldn't have Mello in many GPP lineups. I don't think. Um, I mean, maybe as a throw in here or there type of thing if you're making multiple lineups, like you said. But for cash, I could see it just because I do think that she has a safe value of that 50 to 70 point range. Um, so I do think, for her price point in cash, that you can get those higher priced fighters. Not the worst play in the world. We got Relvian Paiva versus the guy. This one to you. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this gentleman Zalgis. I've heard kind of like mixed opinions all week on this fight. Zalgis, I do think he's talented. I think this is a pretty tough spot for him, to be honest with you. I just think that Paiva is a bit better than him striking wise in a fight that should remain on the feet. Paiva is a guy that I'll just say it. I mean, he got unlucky in his first two UFC fights. I thought he beat Car France. I understand with split decisions, you got opinions both ways. But every time I watch that fight against France, I think he won. So anyway, and then Bontarine, obviously there was the cut there. So Paiva's talented. I do like him in general. And Zalgas is talented as well. He's a guy who has been tested. I mean, I'm sure you came across during research. Ali Begatinov, Tyson Nam, guys that used to fight in the UFC or fight in the UFC now. So it's nice to see that he's been 5 rounds. And he comes from ACB or M1, one of those Russian promotions that I rate highly. Like if you come from that promotion, I think that that's good, you know. So in a fight that should be won or lost on the feet, though, I think Paiva is a bit better than him. And for DK, it's interesting because in Paiva's last fight against De La Rosa, I thought he was knockout or bust, and as a result, I was very underweight to him. And of course, he goes out there and gets the knockout at a low ownership. And so that's kind of what I think of him here. Like, you know, while he strikes in volume, which is nice, for 8,700, I think we need a lot of volume out of him, assuming he's not going to get any, you know, knockdowns. I don't think he's going to try and go for takedowns, despite the fact that he is probably the better grappler here. So I think what I'm hoping for if I'm rostering Paiva is the knockout. So again, I make multiple lineups. I'll have a little bit of him, but you know, if you're asking me who do I like more between, you know, him or Özdemir or Americani, I like those other guys more because I just think that they have a bit more room to hit that upside. But Paiva's okay in that sense. Zalgas is like, you know, like a live underdog. I don't see where his upside is, though. You know, on DraftKings, I understand we want to target underdogs that win because that's technically their meeting value. But in general, in like larger field tournaments, I want to take some of these shots on fighters that I not only think have a legitimate chance to win, but also a legitimate chance to score high, whether it's by finish or wrestling or whatever. And Zalgas just doesn't really fit that mold. I don't think he's going to finish Paiva, and he's mainly a striker, so I'm just not expecting him to land takedowns. And the striking output is pretty low from what I've seen. So it's going to kind of be like a competitive like decision if Zalgas wins. So for that reason, I'm pretty much off of him. I like Paiva more of the two in the matchup. What do you make of this? Do you like Paiva or?
I'd lean him, but I don't really feel good about it. Kind of like, to your point, he is the better striker. He is a lot faster than Zalgas from what I've seen, so I think he can use that to his advantage. But at the same time, I do worry a little bit. I think that Zalgas is bigger than him, so I do think that if you could get him into clinch or get him down to the ground somehow, that could be an issue. And you know that he could steal around, negate that power, so on and so forth. For his price at 8,700 on DraftKings, I don't think I'll have much of him just because, like you said, I don't really think that the upside is there. Unless we see one of those knockouts that I'm not really expecting. I just think he's a little too high priced at 8,700. I think he should be more around the 82 to 8,400 range, and then I'd feel a little more comfortable sprinkling him in there a little bit. So I'll probably have a couple of him, but I don't think he will be one that I have much exposure to, and that I don't see myself betting this fight at all either. Actually supposed to be Marcin Tiberia versus Alexander. Fight got canceled because I was very, very high on Romanov. He was actually one of my top plays this week, betting and DraftKings wise. So I was very disappointed when I did see that fight did get canceled. The fight that we got now is Marcin Tiberia versus Maxim Grishin. I personally don't really have a lean one way or the other on this fight. I'm not very high on Tiberia at all. I don't think that he's that great of a fighter, honestly. Personally, I think he would have lost the fight against Romanov. I do lean him a little bit in this fight just because of the simple fact that Grishin, from what I've seen, doesn't really impress me that much, honestly. He's coming out of PFL. The fighters in PFL, from what we've seen with Lins and people of that nature, they just don't really seem to stack up against UFC fighters. Um, Lin, since winning the PFL, he's lost by decision against Arlovsky, and just got knocked out in his last fight. So he hasn't really looked good since coming over from PFL. I kind of think the same thing will happen here with Grishin. Surprisingly, Grishin is the higher priced fighter, but I think if I remember correctly, Romanov may have been 8,100 as well, so I think they maybe just added Grishin into Romanov's spot and called it a day, pretty much. But yeah, I'm not going to have much of this fight at all, personally, betting wise or drafting wise. I don't think.
Yeah, I could see a lot of people going that way. It's just like it's not like it doesn't exactly scream it's going to get a lot of DraftKings points, because Tybura just, historically, even when he wins, he doesn't put up monstrous scores. And, more or less, I'm on kind of that same page of like this fight probably doesn't score well. I can see a couple paths where it does, and for that reason, I'll have a little bit of exposure to both guys. What I'm hoping for out of Grisham in times when I roster him is I'm not so sold on Tybura's durability. He, in his first few fights in the UFC, he's shown to historically be a durable heavyweight. Prior to the Lewis fight, he had only been stopped by strikes one time, and it was like a doctor stoppage. And then we see Lewis finish him, but then it's excusable because, Lewis hits really hard for heavyweight standards. But then we see the Abdurrahimov fight and then the Sakai fight. Like, that's where it starts to get concerning. And so what I see out of this Maxim guy is his striking output is low, but I do think he's the better striker here. I think he'll be faster. I think he's technical. I think he hits pretty hard. I noticed that he hurt Jordan Johnson, former UFC fighter, durable guy. I think there's potential with him. Again, I do think he's knockout or bust. Tybura, the scenario where he does well is like kind of just imposes his physicality. He's a big dude for heavyweight standards, and he is a black belt. And I do think Maxim can be taken down. I do think he could be out wrestled. And I know Tybura isn't an elite wrestler, but the size and BJJ, there's something there with him. I can see some potential with him to impose that grappling-based game plan. So just to not get away from the main point, I don't think it's the best part of the wrestling slate, but one that I'll have a little bit of exposure to both sides. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if you're doing multiple lineups, I can certainly see, in a heavyweight fight, anything can happen. You can have those flash knockouts and, that they score big. So, yeah, I can see that in a multi-lineup type thing. So the next fight, we got Leonardo Santos versus Roman Bogotov. What do you think about this one?
I'm actually going to ask you a question right away. Do you think Bogotov will wrestle here? Or do you think he's going to try and strike with the 4th degree black belt in Santos?
I think he tries to strike.
Okay. I'm with you on that. I haven't heard many people on that same side. And I understand why people think that, because you look at this guy's tape, and I'm sure you've seen too, the guy just goes out there and he wants to wrestle. Against Santos, though, I just feel like that wouldn't be an optimal game plan. The guy, I understand, the inactivity, he's been fighting for so long. I get all that, but the dude is still a 4th degree black belt. I just feel like that would not be ideal to just go out there and shoot takedowns on a guy that's that high of a BJJ rank. So I'm with you. I think he mostly strikes in this fight is kind of a fight where like we see two guys that excel in grappling, strike, and where it's pretty knockout or bust. Santos, I know the guy hits hard. The guy hits like a truck. But the thing with him, though, is his output is so darn low. I mean, even going to the Adriano Martins fight, he won a split decision there. Good on him. But he landed 23 strikes. So while Santos is very skilled, the pace at which he fights and the cardio that he has just makes me concerned about him in general. So I could just see the new gentleman here, Bogatov, just keeping the fight on the feet, having the better cardio, and just doing a little bit more than Santos and avoiding getting hurt. I don't think Bogatov's like an elite striker or anything, but he can just kind of be busier than Santos, I think. So it's a very boomer bust fight in my estimation. Like, yeah, sure, Santos could win by knockout, he can win by finish, but also if he doesn't win by that, I think it's going to just be a low scoring fight. I mean, I just think that this Bogatov gentleman here is a better wrestler, could probably keep the fight standing. Where again, this is MMA. Anybody could knock out anybody, but I haven't seen anything on tape that says like Bogatov's like so likely to knock out Santos. So it's just a fight to me, kind of like Paiva Zalgas, where like I just think that there's like limited upside here. And for that reason, I'm going to be underweighted to this fight. What is your take on this one? You think there's a finish materializing, or?
I mean, could there be? Sure. Santos did show the his last fight against Ray that he does still have that great power and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I know he did have almost 3 years between fights, but at the end of the day, the guy's 40 years old. When did the wheels start to fall off? So that does worry me a little bit. I think if I had to lean one way or the other, I'd probably lean Santos, just because he's done it over a longer period of time, and where he did have those 3 years off, that doesn't hurt him as much, I don't think, as say a guy that had been fighting for all those years. It didn't do as much wear and tear on his body. So I'd probably lean Santos, but like you said, I think it is very much boom or bust. He's either gonna get the finish and score pretty good, or he's gonna score 50 or 60 points in a decision victory type thing. I don't think I'll have much of either fighter. I don't really see myself taking Bogatov. He's not a bad fighter. I just don't really have a read on him. So I don't see myself personally taking him much in this fight at all. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. On Fight Island, are they going to be doing these smaller cage that they were doing at Apex, or are they going to be doing the?
Everything that I've seen, it's the normal cage size, the 30-foot. And again, I got I think Steve actually asked me like how I'm kind of like looking at it in terms of like a previous card that we had. And the most similar thing is that Abu Dhabi card for 242, where it's like hot. They're not outside necessarily, but it's still like a hot environment in a normal cage. So that's basically in a nutshell. That's everything I've heard. 30-foot, just hot. It's like the big thing. Obviously outside too, but.
Well, no, it's going to be inside, isn't it? It's going to be inside the dome, or are they actually fighting on the the beach? Because I had always heard that those that beach ring was just their training ring basically, and that was for promotion type thing, and that they were going to be actually fighting in like a bubble that they had created with a ring in it. Has it been actually confirmed that they're fighting actually on the beach outside?
All the pictures that I saw were on the beach outside from the latest news update that I saw. Who knows? I'm sure they might update it along the way, but everything that I saw was outside on the beach. So yeah, I don't know. Either way,
I mean, yeah, as a fight fan, I think that'd be really cool to see. Um, but yeah, I had heard that they were going to be fighting in a bubble. I had also heard some that they were going to be fighting at like 2 a.m. Is that accurate?
yeah, like 2 a.m. their time. I think that's when the prelims start. And then I think the main card is like 6 a.m. And I know that because Ariel Helwani, when he had Paige Van Zandt on his show, he like notified her, and that was like that was the first time she was aware that their Abu Dhabi time was fighting at 6 a.m. and this was a few days ago. But
Yeah, so it's basically you wake up and you're fighting type thing.
yeah, it's crazy, man. The fact that they're accommodating for us out here, it's just, I mean, God bless the UFC. I don't know what else to say. I mean, like, where else does this type of stuff happen? I mean, I don't mind, because not to go out on a rant here, but the fight folks, the fans from Europe and over there, all the normal times for us out here in the States, all those cards are in the middle of the night for them. So whenever we have an occasional, China, Singapore, I'm like, you know what, like. Yeah, I'm not going to say I've watched all of them in the middle of the night, but like, can I watch a few here and there? Like, yeah, I mean, look at all these people from across the world that have to do that consistently. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. I'll do it. And if not, I'll watch it the morning after. So, business as usual for the UFC.
Yeah, I'm just more curious how that's going to, affect the fighters, if at all. Um, you know, waking up at that point in time and basically jumping right into the fight, or do they stay awake the whole time and then they're tired? How exactly that's not their normal routine. So there has to be, I think, some sort of effect to the fight in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I guess we'll have to see. It's going to be probably a learning experience, and we'll see with these cards to come how they adapt. So.
Yeah. So the next fight we got here, we got Macwin Armakani versus Danny Henry. I'll kick this one to you because I know you've mentioned it a couple times. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm interested in this fight for DK. I think that that the odds suggested too that it's one of the fights more likely to end in a finish. I like that about it. I also like that it's in the mid range, and I think Makwan will get some ownership. I just don't see why. I could reasonably foresee him not exceeding 30%. And if he's below 30% and he, goes out there and grapples and finishes Henry, I think that's a good scenario and one that I think could happen. We talked about earlier about people wanting to target fighters on DraftKings that are reliable. In other words, fighters that have scored well in the past. And Makwan doesn't always fit that mold. 86 points against Fishgold, 65 against Knight. But those guys are good grapplers. In this fight against Henry, I just think that the grappling disparity is more in his favor. So I do think that there's potential for him to finish this fight earlier. I think there's potential for him to get more grappling advances than say he did against Knight or Fishgold. So for that reason, I'll have Makwan. I'm playing him because I think he could finish the fight. I think he's just a better fighter, more technical. But I'll also have Henry too, and this is why: is that Makwan, the glaring thing that sticks out is the cardio. The cardio definitely can be much improved. The Shane Burgos fight, obviously, but even other fights. And we've seen Henry. You can already tell where I'm going with this. In the Tamer fight, just kind of get take damage early, but he's tough enough and he's got good enough cardio to make it and kind of take over, like if the opposition gasses. And I could see something like that happening here if Mach 1 doesn't get him out of there early, because the cardio does concern me. So I don't think Henry's going to be like that popular of an underdog, but I can see him doing well here. If he wins, I think he's either going to win by finish. I think he can win by knockout because I still go back on tape and I see Jason Knight knock down Americani twice. It makes me nervous, to be honest with you. Because Knight, he had his run with the UFC, but he's not known as a power puncher. So, and Henry, I don't think he's like an elite power guy either. But we saw him hurt Dawodu. He's hurt other fighters as well. He's aggressive. He throws in volume. So I see the potential here for both guys. I'll have a decent amount of exposure to both fighters, and yeah, I think it's very viable for tournaments. How about you?
Yeah, I am pretty high on Mach 1 this fight. I do think that he does have the potential to get the finish. I think that he could win via submission. But I think that even if he doesn't win via submission and doesn't get the finish, that, yeah, his cardio does worry me a little bit. But I think that he can get enough takedowns in the first couple rounds that he'll be able to win via a good scoring decision victory. He normally averages 3.39 takedowns per fight, and Henry has only a C there, but downs like normal.
Looks like Ryan's mic is muted there, so we'll just wait for that to get back. But yeah, Salikov, Zaleski is, I think, a good fight. Both sides here. Just a fan-friendly fight, to be honest with you. I think that this fight will be incredible. Like Salikov, king of kung fu, very good striker, about as good as you could get striking wise. And so I could see him, definitely having success striking wise. And, that is good. But for DraftKings, I want a knockout if I'm rostering Salikov. And looks like we got some technical difficulties. Huh. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what just happened there. So it was just like you were talking.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Out.
Yeah, like I saw you talking to, and I couldn't hear a word you were saying. All right, so I guess we'll just go back from the beginning of that one. Then, could you hear anything that I was saying in regard to Mach 1, or?
All I heard was that you liked them, and you're getting into the why, and didn't hear anything after that. So.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. No. Basically, I was saying that I do think that his his takedown offense is good enough that even if he doesn't get the finish, that I think that he'll be able to get down enough takedowns um, to get a good scoring victory, even winning just by decision. He averages 3.39 takedowns per fight. Henry uh, only has a 66% takedown defense, which isn't the worst in the world, but it also isn't very great. So I think that Makwan will be able to, at worst, score a good decision. And yeah, so I'm pretty high on him, and I actually do have a bet on him at negative 200 as well.
Nice. And then did you want to introduce Salikov DeSantos, or did you want me to start out?
Yeah, you can introduce that one because that's probably what you were talking about, and that I couldn't hear anything. But go ahead and introduce that one since you mentioned it.
Yeah. So Salikov DeSantos, just awesome fight right away. Not a secret. These guys will both bring it. Salikov just king of kung fu, and his resume speaks for itself. I mean, this guy, like, I'm just watching him in MMA fights. Like, his striking is like as good as you could get from a technical perspective, and that's interesting. In general, because if the guy could keep the fight standing, it's like not many guys are going to beat him. Like, just the vast majority of guys he's going to beat just if he can keep the fight standing. DeSantos is a good striker in his own right. I think he's threatening. I just think that Salikov's a bit better of a striker than him. I think he's more technical. I think he'll be fast as well. Or excuse me, he'll have a speed advantage as well. And his striking defense is good enough to where, like, DeSantos, I just don't. I think what I'm hoping for when rostering DeSantos is either a knockout or a sub. Like, I guess a decision would be okay for 8K. Just, maybe he's like one of the few guys below 8K to win. Doubt that that's the case, but I'm just more so hoping for a finish from Zaleski here. He is a black belt. Salikov is a blue belt. That's how you beat Salikov. We saw it in his debut against Garcia. Garcia, big physical guy, took him down, took his back, got the choke. I just don't think that DeSantos's wrestling is good enough to get Salikov down with consistency. Now, that said, I think it can only take one time when he just takes his back and gets the choke, because Salikov, literally when Garcia took him down, he gave up his back to get up. So I do see the potential here with DeSantos, but I don't think it's this like slam dunk spot it was like against Millender where he like easily takes him down. And because Salikov, despite the fact that Garcia did take him down, Garcia had to really work for him. Like, DeSantos, you brought up the numbers, his takedown accuracy is like 20%. And just from the eye test, it could definitely be improved. So it's a pretty knockout or bust fight, on the Salikov fight. So that's why I would play Salikov is for that knockout. Even at 8,200, I just don't think he's going to land enough strikes in a decision to score sufficiently. He's just not going to land takedowns here. So while it's going to be like an awesome fight from like a viewership perspective for DK, I think the winner is very reliant on the finish to score well. That said, it could still happen. And that said, I will have some exposure to both guys, but again, not an all-in fight for me because I could reasonably see how it just, not like fails from a DraftKings scoring perspective. Which fighter interests you more in this matchup here?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. I mean, from a DraftKings and betting perspective, I don't think I will have much exposure to either fighter. Neither of them really do much volume at all. Both of them throw a little under 3 strikes per minute. So, you're not going to get the significant strikes. You're kind of hoping for a finish, basically, like you said. I do think that this is going to be a very good fight. I just don't think that it's going to be a very good betting or DraftKings fight. I think that it has the potential to be a sneaky fight of the night type fight, because both of these fighters have showed, great fighting IQ, have done great fights and all that. So I think that it can very well be an amazing fight, just not necessarily from the perspective that we look for. To your point, not that I necessarily think that Salikov wants to take the fight to the ground because he's not the best there, but Dos Santos does only have a 48% takedown defense. So, I could see Salikov maybe landing one or two takedowns throughout the fight to add to the decision type victory and hopefully getting up really quickly afterwards, because I don't think that he wants to be on the ground, but he may use that to, get the judge's favor, basically, type of thing. Um, so, yeah, I lean Salikov, but I won't have much of either on DraftKings.
Fair. Yeah.
So the next fight we got here, where we're to the main card now. We got Amanda Ribas versus Paige Van Sant. I think this fight pretty much speaks for itself, honestly. I think Paige Van Sant is basically done with the UFC. She's pretty much said that, for the last year or two, that she doesn't have to fight, that she makes just as much money doing her Instagram stuff and modeling stuff and all that she does in the UFC. And at the end of the day, I think the UFC is seeing that she isn't as great of a fighter as they thought she was going to be when, she first started out. When she first started out, she looked very good. But at the end of the day, the fighters that she was fighting weren't the talent level of the fighters that she's fighting now. Ever since she started fighting more well-known fighters, she just hasn't been that great. So I think that she does lose this fight, um, which I think she's honestly perfectly fine with, which is kind of sad. But I don't think Amanda is going to be worth her salary on DraftKings, though. She is the highest priced fighter on DraftKings, which to me, she shouldn't be. The only way that I think that she scores enough is via finish. And Van Zant, well, she has been finished in the past. I think unless she's completely mentally checked out at this point and is just fighting to get the last paycheck on our contract type of thing, I don't necessarily think that this fight ends via decision. Via finish. And I don't think that Amanda will throw enough strikes, get enough takedowns, so forth to pay off her salary at high price that she is. So I personally will not have much of her on DraftKings just because the other prices with the other people around there I like a lot more than I like her. I do think that she'll be more low owned due to that fact. So she's a sneaky play type of thing. But I just won't have much of her just because I wouldn't be surprised if she scores 80 points. Betting wise, there's no way I'm touching this fight. Her money line is all the way at negative 900 now, which seems insane to me. So I don't think I touched that at all. And I mean, maybe you do inside the distance in hopes that Van Zandt is checked out and get plus odds at that. But that's the only way that I touch this fight betting wise. What about you? What do you think about this one?
Yeah, as we're talking here, I don't know how it is from a viewership perspective, but it looks like we're dealing with a little bit of a lag here. So, anyway, it's yeah, I totally agree with your statement, your stand on that. Whenever you have a fighter that is priced very high on DraftKings and should be popular, which I do think will be the case here. I do think that people on DraftKings, as I'm sure you've seen before in the past, they want to pay up for safety, even if it means 95, 9,600. They're willing to pay up for the highest price fighter if it means they get like a safe win or a lock. And I bring this up because, you know, there is a scenario here where Ribas wins, and even if she finishes, she gets 100 points, but that still doesn't guarantee that she's on the optimal because of we've got some other fighters that we'll get to, and even like fighters that are priced below, like Uzdemir and Americani, that could just kind of win and do well, but just kind of kick Kibas off the optimal lineup because of the salary. You just simply can't afford her, or even somebody just outscores her. So I like that take in that sense. I will still have some exposure to her because I do think that there's potential for her to finish. I don't think that she gets like a standing knockout or anything like that. But I more so see it materializing on the ground. I do think that she's the far superior Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. And Paige, you bring up the statistics, and I'll just bring up something here. He's given up 28 advances in her UFC career. It's obviously a lot. Obviously, the takedown defense has looked shaky at times too. And Ribas, judo practitioner, black belt. I could see her getting Paige down, passing the guard, getting the choke early. Like you said, I think Ribas wants it more. She seems laser focused on UFC gold, whereas, like you said, Paige kind of, she does have other stuff going on. And so, yeah, Paige, I always say this in other cards too. I like to target fights on both sides on DraftKings where I'm confident the winner scores well, but I'm not super confident in who wins. Like, Marc-Andre Barrio versus Oscar Pichota. Wasn't super confident who win. I mean, I picked Barrio, but I'm not going to act like I was super confident in him or anything like that. So that would be an instance where I'll target both sides here. I don't see it. Simply put, I just got to plant my flag, and it's just Ribas or pass. If Paige wins, then good for her. Just a fighter, I just don't think is worth an investment from my estimation on DraftKings. So yeah, Ribas or pass. She's safe. Just one more thing I'd like to add. There are avenues in cash games that I've experimented with that I've liked that did not include Ribas in there. And I'm saying that because, she's minus 900 or whatever her odds are, ridiculous, high above everybody else. And what that does is it kind of kicks off other combinations in that lineup that I don't prefer. So anyway, she's viable in cash, but I don't necessarily think she's a lock based on the construction that you'll get from the other roster spots. So if that makes sense, then hopefully it does. If not, I probably could explain it a little bit better. But
yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Her salary is so high that when you're playing a guy, or in this case, a girl at 9,500, it really does eat up a good amount of your salary. And so at that point in time, you're having to, use people that you don't really have much confidence in. I'll say this right now. As of now, I do not have her in my cash lineup at all. I mean, my cash lineup today, and I don't have her in there at all. So,
Yeah, I think that's fine because I do think that, and I've been guilty of it too in the past. We feel like we need to have that super safe fighter in our cash lineup, but we did the card one card ago, Poirier Hooker. I didn't have Brendan Allen or Mike Perry in my cash game. I was mostly mid range because we had some odds values there. So anyway, it's basically what I'm trying to say is it's a card to card basis. So
yeah. So the next fight we got here, we got Volkan Ozdemir versus Yuri Projeka. I'll kick this one to you. What are your thoughts on this one?
yeah, to be honest with you, it's hard for me not to like Ustamir here. Just the much better resume and a good guy for light heavyweight standards. You know, I know people were a little bit skeptical about him early on in his career, and I can understand it. You know, you got this guy that comes in and he's just quick KOing everybody into a title shot. So it's like we don't really get to see what he's like beyond the first few minutes. But he's good. You know, he's a good fighter. He was competitive, very competitive with Reyes. Beats Rakic. We know that Ustamir is like a legitimate top 5 guy, and Yuri is still a question mark. I mean, like, yeah, he's looked good in some of his rising fights, but that said, he's still shown some flaws. I've seen him get taken down. I've seen him get him put in bad spots on the ground. He keeps his hands low. His striking defense is a liability, and we know Ustamir hits really hard. So 8,400, the logic for why I would play Ustamir is I'm hoping for a knockout, potentially. He grapples here. I know he's not known for that, but I do think that, and because, again, I'm looking at Instagram and that sort of thing on these fighters, listening to interviews. I just want to do as much due diligence as I can. But he's making improvements there. You know, I see the improvements with Ustamir fight to fight. And I could see him doing it with this Yuri gentleman. Like in the striking exchanges, he just kicks at his legs, he slows him down. Maybe he knocks him out, but even if he doesn't, he could just maybe take him down, take his back at the choke. Because I do think that Yuri's a bit susceptible defensively. So for 8,400, if Ustamir wins the decision, it most likely won't be on the winning lineup. But again, when we play DraftKings, it's in these tournaments, it's boom or bust. And you know, that we realize that risk when we're making lineups. So I'm playing Ustamir for that KO upside. Yuri is less of a consideration for me in this matchup because Ustamir is so durable. Yeah, I've seen Yuri strike in combination, but I've also just seen him strike at low output. And again, I still, you know, I understand that like resume isn't everything in this game, but I do think it's important, especially when you got a guy that is as proven as Ustamir and this guy Yuri, who's still relatively unknown. I mean, yeah, the record is very good, but again, it's not in the UFC yet. So there's just even a chance that Ustamir just kind of blows him out, like just based off the fact that he's just better than him. So I'm on Ustamir here. I understand it's light heavyweight and everybody hits hard, but I just tend to favor the durability of fighters in the long haul. That's what we have here in Ustamir. So do you like Volkan here, or do you like the guy? Okay.
Yeah, no, I like Volkan here. I'm basically the same thoughts as you. I think Volkan. This is just a huge step up for Yuri. I don't necessarily think that he's ready for it yet. Before this fight, you know, his top fights were against CB Dalloway and who was it, Muhammad Lawal. You know, those were his biggest named fights. And don't get me wrong, they're, you know, not bad fighters, but they're nowhere near the level of Ozdemir is. I don't really worry about the knockout for Ozdemir. He's only been finished once, and that was against. He's only been knocked out once, and that was against Cormier. And even that was more so a ground and pound type thing, if I remember correctly. I was actually at the fight, and So yeah, it was more so wasn't necessarily Cormier using his power. He just out wrestled him and ground and pound and finished him that way. So I don't necessarily think that that the finish is too much of a worry for Usman. I think that he's starting to climb his way back up to title contention. This is another step in the right direction. Um, so yeah, I do like him a lot on DraftKings at 8,400. I'll have a good amount of exposure to him. I do think he's more so knockout. That's what he needs in order to be able to score high, over 100 points. But I think that he can get the finish here, honestly. So yeah, I like him a good amount, and I do actually like him betting wise as well. He's only negative 160 right now, so I think that's very good value for someone who's going against someone like Yuri, who is making a huge jump when it comes to fighting Usman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, huge. We'll learn a lot about him. I'm kind of surprised that they gave him Volkan, because if they wanted to like build him up, and he does have hype on him, obviously. Like, I don't know. I feel like they could have given him somebody else, if they wanted to do that. But
right, yeah, give him some, in the 15, 10 to 15 range instead of top 5 type range. I know Volkan isn't as huge of a name as he was when he got the title fight, but he honestly probably wasn't ready for that title fight when he got it. So I do think he's still a very big name fighter. He just wasn't ready for that fight when he got it. Same with Francis when he fought for the title against Stipe. I don't think he was ready for the title fight. He was a huge name, but he wasn't ready fighting wise. So I think if he fought Cormier now, it maybe would go a little bit differently. But I think that he easily beats Yuri, honestly.
I agree.
So the next fight here, we actually got a rematch. We got Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrade. I know this is going to sound very unpopular. I personally think that Rose is one of the most mentally weak fighters in the UFC. I understand everything that she's gone through when it comes to with her past and all that stuff. But I just think that when it comes to fighting, she's shown a couple times that she isn't all there when it comes to fighting. I'm honestly surprised that she is as high priced as she is on DraftKings. Yes, she is the bigger name, but she lost that first fight. And, she actually got finished in the second round. And if you look at her history of fights that she's lost, they've all been to, pretty much the same type of fighters. They've all been against physically strong, good wrestling fighters who can use their size, throw some strikes from time to time, and kind of bully her around. And that's exactly what Jessica Andrade does. She takes down gets over 3 takedowns a fight. Is very strong. I personally like Andrade a lot this fight. I have her as my underdog play on this card, and I do have a bet on her as well. I don't think that this is a good matchup at all for Rose. I don't think she's a horrible fighter per se. I just don't think that this is the type of fight that she does good in. She does good in the type of fights which are a lot of striking, a lot of volume, against Joanna and stuff like that. Against stronger fighters, she just does not do good. So So I personally think that Rose loses again this card.
Yeah, I'm picking Andrade here too. You know, I like her in the matchup and on DraftKings especially too. I mean, Andrade historically is like DraftKings gold. I mean, even when she wins decisions, it's big scores, and you know, it's we know because she just pushes such a heck of a pace. You know, I'm looking at the Torres fight: 92 strikes, significant ones, 10 takedowns, 8 advances. Like that's what she does. I mean, there's I guess like the chance that she's a bit hesitant here because of the Zhang fight. I'm just for me like I'm just not ready to say like a fighter's going to fight differently if we haven't really like seen it yet. And you know, rewatching the Jane fight, I'm just not ready to say that she's got like a chin issue or anything like that yet. I mean, yeah, Zhang finished her, she hurt her, but it was like nasty elbows in the clinch. Then she kneed her, like, and it hurt her the body, I think. And it was just such so many hard strikes from the now champ. And it was just an accumulation of them. So it's pretty excusable, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Sure, Rose could still hurt her. You know, we saw her hurt her the first time. To me, it's like Rose needs to kind of fight this like perfect fight. Like she needs to. She's obviously the more technical striker. She's going to have more success at range, but she needs to like keep that range like long enough to win rounds. And I don't really like see it. You know, yeah, she did it for a few minutes in the first round, but what I remember the first round versus what I went back and saw it on tape, I thought like she like more or less dominated the first round, like watching it live. But watching it on tape, like yeah, she won the first round, but like Andrade like had her moments and she came on strong late, which is important here because as the fight progresses on a minute-to-minute basis, I just think Andrade is going to close distance more. I think she's got the better cardio of the two. She could use the leg kicks again to slow her down. And yeah, Rose is better at range, no doubt about it. But like when it's close up, that favors Andrade. I think she hits harder. She throws with more volume as well. And she's the better wrestler. Again, I'm just not like that Kimura defense that Rose had. Like it worked to some extent, but like I would be totally shocked if she submitted Andrade. I mean, Andrade is a black belt herself, competes in BJJ competition. Like that would be just crazy if that actually happens. So I do think that Andrade could not only take her down this time, but kind of keep her there and pass the guard a bit, maybe land some ground and pound. And so, yeah, just not to bury a lead on DK, Andrade definitely in play. Like she's got such a safe floor if she wins. Like I mean, again, she just doesn't score poorly when she wins. And at 7,200, it's like don't need much as it is. Rose at 9K is relying on a knockout. I think. I mean, yeah, if she wins like a volume based decision, that's not bad. Obviously, I just think that she'll need to score higher than that at 9K to be on the winning lineup. We just talked about Volkan. We just talked about Americani. If those guys win by finish, they could outscore Rose for sure. So Rose is an okay play. My preferred play of the two is Andrade, especially for the discount. I think she's viable in all formats. And again, I do think that people to some extent will be off of her a little bit. And I don't expect her to be like, 10% owned or 20% owned. She'll probably come in a bit higher than that. But when we look at the other names, when we look at Holloway that we'll get to and Aldo, and we mentioned Mello and just other fighters in general, that'll kind of take some attention off of her, especially coming off the 2 losses. Then I think that's like a good buy low spot on her for DK. So, yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page with that fight dynamic.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I think even if she doesn't win, she's still such a low price that she can very easily get 60 to 80 points if the fight goes to 5 rounds, which I think more than likely, if Rose does win the fight, it is by decision. So I do think that very easily she could get 60, 80 points even if she doesn't win the fight. So at 7,200, that's great value if we're talking cash. Um, so I like her a lot on all formats.
Sounds good.
So the next fight we got Jose Aldo versus PDN. I'll kick this one to you. What do you think about this one?
Yeah. I like Jan in general, just like I like Masvidal in general, which we'll get to. But, I do like to separate my bias as a fan of these fighters and kind of just kind of analyze the matchup as it is. And I tend to think that just kind of helps me out and other people too. I just feel like that helps us all kind of just analyze more objectively. And Jan's good. I think that Aldo could win, assuming Jan doesn't knock him out. And I realize that Jan winning by knockout is the most likely thing. I think that is most likely what happens here. So it's obviously kind of not a reach to say that, but Aldo's got a shot. Like I do legitimately think he's got a chance here. And it's not just because he fought in Rice and looked good there. I do worry about the damage Aldo's taken throughout his career. Now he's got to shed an extra pound to get to title fighting weight, which again at this stage of his career is not ideal. And we know Jan just hits really hard. So Jan, at any point in this fight, while these two are striking, because obviously this fight is going to be won or lost on the feet, Jan could just hurt him with a big punch and that's it. Like I know Aldo's durability has looked fine recently. Again, he hasn't really been hurt since the Holloway fights, but I still think there's potential there for Jan to win by knockout. So that's why I'm playing Jan. He can score well in a decision. And I think that's another reason to play him. But I'm more confident in Volkanovski and Usman scoring well in decision win scenarios. And they're also cheaper. So again, if you just ask me like straight up of those three, I would prefer the other two more. That said, Jan is still a good play, no doubt about it. Although I will also have some exposure to as well. I think that a lot of people think that Jan should win, and I think that's fair. But again, I still do think that Aldo can win, if he doesn't get hurt. So, because I just think he is the better, more technical striker with better defense. I'm not sold on Jan's defense. I wish his defense would be a bit better, to be honest with you. His movement can be improved. In the Jimmy Rivera fight, I mean, I know Rivera is a good fighter and everything, but like, I don't know, like he got hit a little bit too much for my liking there, and the Dotson knockdown, and again, so it's just I'm not counting Aldo out. I'll have a little bit of him, but I'll also have some Jan too. So again, just another 5-round fight that is good. We get 2 more rounds and one that could finish. So I like it. Do you think Aldo's got a shot, or are you more on Jan here?
I'm pretty heavy on Jan. I mean, I may have 1 or 2 of Aldo. Like I said, I normally make about 20 to 30 lineups, so I'm sure I'll have a couple of Aldo, but I won't have much. I do think that Jan is the better fighter. Now, this is a pretty big step up for him. But the amount of strikes that he throws per minute, he throws and lands over 5.6 strikes per minute. So I think that he'll be able to land enough strikes to, at the very least, win via decision. I do think, honestly, that there is a better chance of him winning decision than you do think. I actually think that is more than likely how he wins the fight. is by decision. Although, well, he hasn't looked as great as he used to, and I do think he's starting to get past his prime. He still doesn't get finished very often. So I do think that the likelihood that he gets finished is not the highest. So I will have you on. I think that even in a decision victory, that he'll throw enough strikes and land enough significant strikes, maybe get one or two knockdowns, that he can score good at 9,000. And I also do like him a lot betting wise. I have a bet on him, and him via the decision, I don't think is the worst prop play at all. It's plus 300. For a guy like Aldo who hasn't got finished very much in his career, I don't think that that's the worst odds in the world. So I may throw a unit on that one as well, honestly.
Yeah, it's plus 330 right now, which is, that's reasonable, at least. So.
Likely than how the fight honestly goes. So, we'll see. But yeah, I'll have a good amount of on. The next fight we got here, we have another rematch. We got Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. I think, if anyone deserved a rematch right away, it obviously it is Max Holloway. But I just don't see this fight going any differently than the first one did, honestly. Sure, Max always does have a puncher's chance with the amount of strikes that he throws per round and lands per round. Both fighters throw and land over 6 strikes per minute. But I just think Volkanovski has shown the path to victory when it comes to fighting Max. And at the end of the day, the guy is just a machine. He hasn't lost a fight since 2013. I don't really see how Max can have any different of a game plan than what he had the first fight. And he got honestly dominated the first fight. So yeah, I'm pretty heavy on Vulcan. I think that he does win this fight. I don't think it's the worst strategy in the world when it comes to cash games to actually stack this fight. And that is actually what I do have right now is a stack of this fight, because I do think that there's a very good chance that it does go the 5 rounds. Both fighters have shown having pretty good chins and not getting finished very often. So I do think that there is a very good likelihood that it does go the full 5 rounds. And with the amount of strikes that these guys land per minute, like I said, over 6 strikes per minute for both fighters, that's going to add up over time if Max somehow can figure out how to actually be able to land strikes against Volkanovski. So I do think that that is a viable strategy, kind of like the Poirier-Hooker fight, where you stack one of the main event 5-round fights with the amount of strikes that will be thrown. I don't think we're going to get that amount of volume. That was crazy. But I do think it's a viable strategy. For GPP, I'll mostly be on Vulcan. Maybe 1 or 2 are Max, just due to the price. But I think I'll be more so on Vulcan. What about you?
Yeah, the stack is in play in cash. Yeah, I mean, just the first fight went the way it did, and Max still scored obviously good for his price now. And I'm more so with you on Volkanovski winning. I understand that there's always a case to be made, like, can this fighter adjust? The main thing that Max could do to adjust is check the kicks. But again, going back to my point on Rose, if they haven't done it up until this point of their career, I would like to see him do it if I'm going to assume that he's going to employ it going forward. So that's been Max's kryptonite is, again, the kicks. And Volk is just simply going to be throwing them when they're at kicking range, and Max just isn't going to be responding very often. Even in the boxing exchanges, like Volk got the better of him. Like you said, he like pretty much dominated him. He hits with more power. He was quicker. He had very good feints, better footwork. Volk just has a lot going for him. Like Max was just kind of outgunned, and it's crazy. It just it doesn't mean that like Holloway's like losing a step. It's just like Volk is like that good. So it's again, it just kind of like I understand the opinions basically is where I'm getting that on all aspects of the fights, but I'm just trying to try and tell the viewers like what I'm seeing. And so like Max could win, but like how does he win? Well, he's got to hope basically that Volkanovski gets tired earlier in the fight than he did versus say the previous fight, because in that first fight, where did Max have the most success? Well, rounds 4 and 5, he won on 2 judges' scorecards. But the thing that I'm hopeful here that Volk's cardio is say better here than it was in the first fight, because that first fight, that was his first 5-round fight in the UFC. Like he didn't get no fight night headliners, nothing like that. The guy's always had a motor on him, but the fact that he's gotten that 5-rounder out of the way, I think that there's reason to be optimistic that his cardio could be even better here. So basically how Max wins, he's basically got to hurt Volk, which, again, Max he's a good fighter, but he's not known as a power puncher, and Volk very durable. So remember the shot he took from Chad Mendes. That was crazy. He just got right up. Or he's just kind of got to outvolume him. But again, if we're saying that Volk is the better striker at kicking range and he's the better boxer, then it's just not that likely. So I like that strategy in that people will be very heavy on Max in tournaments because they want that safe play. They want the safe 60 points or 70 points or 7,100. Even if Max loses, he's considered safe, right? But the thing that I'm noticing with tournaments, and you brought up the Hooker Poirier fight from last week, which was great, a great stack. I want to personally shoot for upside, and when we've got other fighters here that we talked about on the card who we think have upside in win scenarios, I will have exposure to Max, but I'm not playing Max thinking like, oh, like I want Volk to win, but like if Max loses, he gets 60 points. Like I want those win points from Max, So to hammer home the point, I will have exposure to Max, but I'm playing him in hopes that he wins. But I'm gonna have more Volkanovski because I do think he wins this fight more often than not. Again, like we just saw in the first fight, even if he wins a decision, over 100 points, that's great for 9,100. Should be a fun one. And one where no wrestling or finish is likely to materialize, but they just land so many strikes on a per minute basis that it really doesn't matter for DK.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this fight is going to be like that Hooker Poirier fight where, even though Hooker didn't get the win, he had so many strikes that I think he scored, over 100 points on that fight as well. And I don't think that Max is going to be like that, honestly. I think Max is very safe for 60 to 80 range, but that's not something that's going to win you a GPP, especially on a card this deep, 13 fights. I would be highly surprised. I would put a lot of money on that a fighter only scoring 60 to 80 points is not on the maximum lineup, the optimum lineup. I just don't think we see that. more than likely, I think we see this being a card where you have to score 600 plus in order to, win a big GPP.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the next fight we got here, we got the main event of the night. We talked about this a little bit before we went on air, but it has changed from initially what it was. Initially, it was supposed to be Usman versus Gilbert Burns. Changed to now Jorge Masvidal versus Usman. I'll kick this one to you. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, we were talking about it beforehand. Just awesome booking. The fight that would have made the most sense to book initially, but again, the UFC's been doing just a killer job of this. So the fact that they got Burns and the fact that Burns fell out and then they got Masvidal, it makes me think that those are the circumstances that needed to take place to get Masvidal to fight in the first place. But anyway, it's obviously an incredible fight, and I love Masvidal. Like I liked him against Till. I bet him against Askren. The Diaz fight was a very good performance. I just don't think this is a great stylistic matchup for him. Again, despite the fact that he is a good fighter, styles make fights, as we've visited so many times from just looking into this game. We see good fighters that are big underdogs in matchups because sometimes it's just not a good style matchup for them. And Usman is the type of fighter that would present problems to Masvidal. Masvidal is a great striker, obviously. The guy's got power, he's technical, good footwork. You could check so many boxes with Masvidal striking-wise, really can. He's knockout or bust to beat Usman, though, I think. Like, can it happen? Sure, absolutely. Masvidal's got power. I don't think Usman's striking defense is elite. I mean, obviously Covington hit him so many times. He could definitely do a better job of moving his head. To his credit, though, definitely he is durable. Never been finished. Never really seen him get hurt either. So we have a spot here where it's like Masvidal basically needs to make the most of those exchanges while they're in space and kind of just hurt him. Otherwise, Usman's just going to clinch up with him, wear him down, work the body, take him down. I know Masvidal's got good takedown defense, but like if Usman is just constantly wearing on him over the course of 5 rounds and just working the body like he's shown to do and just putting the pace on him, I think he could get him down as many times as he needs to and pass the guard, work some ground and pound. I'm not sold on he finishes Masvidal just because Masvidal is so durable and tough to finish. But again, I just think that Usman has the better round-winning tools and a guy that's DraftKings gold. I mean, this is a guy that could land 10 plus takedowns in a 5-round fight. I'm referring to the RDA fight, even the Woodley fight. He got 2 takedowns but landed a bunch of strikes. The Burns fight, I wasn't sold on Usman wrestling, but this one I am. I do think he wrestles here, and he's definitely in play for me. I think he's viable in all formats. Masvidal is just going to be a guy where I'm going to be underweighted to because I do think Masvidal is going to be popular. I mean, he's Masvidal. I like him just as much as the next guy. But again, it's like the matchup thing that has got me kind of like I just don't want to have a lot of exposure to him because, again, I just don't think it's a good matchup for him. If he wins, it's probably going to be by a knockout, and for 7,300, that's great. I will have a little bit of exposure to him for that reason, but my preferred play and the pick clearly for me is Usman. So do you like Usman here, or do you think Jorge's going to pull it off?
Yeah, no, I like Usman a lot. I personally am not a huge Masvidal fan. I do think that he is a little bit overrated. I think his antics more so are what make people into him than necessarily his fighting skills. Because I mean, we're still talking about a guy that just a couple of years ago was almost out of the UFC. Like before he went on this run, he was almost done. Yeah, he's had a great run, but I mean, honestly, what has really changed. He's been able to finish people now, but I wouldn't necessarily say that he's a better fighter than he was before, really. I do think that Usman wins this fight. I don't think that this is the worst matchup for Masvidal, like you say. I actually do think that this is a harder matchup for Usman than Burns was. I like Usman a lot more against Burns than I do against Masvidal. With that being said, I still do like Usman a lot. I actually do already have a 6 unit bet on Usman. So I do like him a lot. I think that he'll be able to land enough strikes, wrestle, get Masvidal down to the ground. Masvidal does have a 78% takedown defense, so he is pretty good against the takedown. But Usman is just on another level when it comes to takedowns. I think that he will at least be able to land 2 or 3. And I mean, he did that against Woodley, who, even though Woodley loves to hug the cage, Woodley still does have one of the best takedown defenses in the UFC, and he still took Woodley down twice. So I have no doubt that he can take Masvidal down at least twice, get some ground and pound. I do see it more so going to the decision. I don't necessarily think Masvidal does get finished, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did get finished in the later rounds because his defense hasn't been the best in the world. Even against Till, he was rocked a little bit. And if Till was a more smarter fighter, I think that he could have finished that fight. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the 4th or 5th round Usman finished it like he finished Covington. But more so, I do think that Usman does win by decision. A very good scoring decision, probably somewhere around the 100 to 120 range. So for 8,900, I do think that he very much is in play. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. One bet that I absolutely love though, and I'm surprised that it's this low, is that the fight goes over 2.5 rounds. Right now, that's only negative 150. Unless Masvidal lands one of those crazy knockouts like he has been known to do, I don't see how this fight ends before the 3rd round at the very earliest. So I do like that bet a lot on top of what I've already put on Usman. So yeah, I'm pretty heavy on Usman this fight.
Yeah. To kind of hammer home what we talked about last time is I don't ever get discouraged when somebody is popular on DraftKings, because it's like, if I think that they're a good play, and I'm saying that because Usman here will be popular, if he wins, it's going to be a big score, and he's probably going to be in the optimal lineup. So I said it on the podcast I did earlier this week, but we have 6 opportunities to be contrarian in our lineup. And if you're playing Usman and 2 other title contenders, personally, I don't see anything is wrong with that if they all score well. And as we talked about, all the winners of those fights can score well. I mean, I always tell myself, those other roster spots should be contrarian in that just target fighters in the mid-range, like those fights like American and Henry or Uzdemir and Yuri, like one of those fights where like people aren't really sure who wins, and as a result, the ownership is a bit less. So again, to just nail down that, yeah, Usman will be popular, but if he wins at 8,900, I mean, we've seen what he's capable of. Even if he gets 100 again, I mean, that's great if you ask me. So
I honestly would not be shocked though if Masvidal is more owned than Usman. Um, Masvidal is one of those names that, especially where we have that Millie contest going on this week for DraftKings, you know you're going to have those fans just throwing in random lineups just to have something to cheer on type thing. They don't necessarily follow fighting or anything like that. Masvidal is one of those names that if you just look really quickly, you're going to have those fans that are not really following MMA much that I think will be very high on Masvidal. So I'd honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Masvidal is just as high owned as Usman, if not higher.
I hope you're right. I mean, that would be kind of nice because it's just like I'm pretty sold that Usman wins. It sounds like you are too, and it's like I like that take though because it's true because we see fighters with big names, and I like even when we saw Conor McGregor against Khabib. I don't remember what Conor's ownership was exactly, but like a lot of people thought, and rightfully so, Khabib was just a bad matchup for him. But because it's Conor McGregor, he gets, whatever it was, 40% ownership. So I do understand your point. Yeah, Masvidal, who knows? Yeah, maybe he gets 30, 40% owned. It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even Hooker, granted that was a lot closer fight than I think this one was, but even Hooker was 35-40%, somewhere around there owned. So, and he's nowhere near the name that Masvidal is just for, the fair weather kind of MMA fans. So I mean, I guess we'll see. I hope that I am right with this because I do think that Usman definitely does win it, and that's a lot of dead lineups if Masvidal doesn't do much. But I wouldn't be shocked at all. So I think we did this last time. If you're okay with doing it again, what is your top? And it can be just contrarian play, but what would you say is your top play for DraftKings, if you had to give one?
Yeah, well, hopefully this one comes through every step of the way here because, to my recollection here, Woodson was doing well, picked him on this platform of yours, and Arosa just gets the choke there at 10% owned. I mean, he was on the winning lineup and all that, so it didn't go accordingly. But this card, I'll just finish up on what we just talked about. I think Usman. Again, I know he's obvious and he's going to be popular, but if he wins, it's hard for me not to think that he's on the winning lineup. I remember we talked about Poirier and Hooker last week. Yeah, they're going to be popular, but when we got 2 extra rounds to work with on DraftKings, I mean, that just raises the point floor by a good margin. I mean, these fighters are popular, but it's like I'd have to go back to like Till versus Thompson, where like a main event or a 5-round fight like actually didn't like do really much on DraftKings. Like they always do well, and that's why they're owned. So again, it would be Usman for me. Always, he's a DK darling. He's my pick to click, if you will.
Yeah, that Woodson pick, man, it killed me. I had 3 fights. It was the Woodson fight, the Penny fight, and I can't remember the other one, but it was another one that they easily were winning, and then they lost in the 3rd round to submission. And I live bet. It was the Frey fight. Frey. So I live bet all 3 of them going into the 3rd round. All 3 of them got finished in the 3rd round.
Oh no!
And it was just horrible. It was like the worst losing streak ever. Anyone I live bet going into the 3rd round that was winning the fight lost in the 3rd round via submission.
Worthy beating Pena by submission. That was like the most MMA is kind of MMA logic because, like, I mean, I'm not taking anything away. Like, that's a great win for Worthy. Like, the guy's done it twice where he's been a big underdog and has come through and finished. But, like, the fact that there was nothing on tape that said like, oh yeah, Worthy's got a good chance of winning by submission. Like there was,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I understand that we're all seeing stuff through a different set of eyes, but it's like, hey, if you had Worthy by submission, I don't know what that prop was, but like,
I think my buddy ended up saying that the prop was like plus 1,500 or something crazy like that. It was insane.
geez,
So it wasn't happening.
yeah,
But
just
yeah.
so
But
empty.
yeah, for my favorite one of DraftKings this week, I'm right with you. I mean, I actually I have this person as my second person, but I don't want to give away my top dog play. Um, so I would say Volkanovski would be probably my top play that I'll give out. I think he's a very safe play. You know, another 5 round fight, another fight that we should see a lot of strikes, potential finish. He says he wants to finish this one, but more than likely, I think it goes the distance, and you're going to get enough strikes that at his price range, um, he'll probably be highly owned, but I think you're going to score enough points that he's very safe value and one of my favorite plays this week.
Yeah, a safe play because it's like when we see rematches of fights that went the full way the first time, and we saw one fighter clearly win, like Jones versus Cormier or something like that. It's hard not to think that they could do it again unless something fluky happens. Because, like we talked about, Volkanovski pretty clearly beats Holloway, and he's probably going to do it again. So, like your call there, yeah, I'd say he's a safe play from MMA standards. Yeah, I expect folks to roll here like you. So I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for joining again. And yeah, if you have any questions, certainly for the viewers, reach out to me at RSCMMA89, or you can reach out to AJ at AJ MMA Betting. He's doing some great things on Twitter, and you know, with his MMA knowledge, sells some picks and information and stuff like that. So certainly hit one of us up if you guys have any questions. And yeah, let's make that money, guys.
Take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
No problem.